What is the other mother? With what little information we do get on the other mother's past, she's clearly a fairy creature. But that begs the question on what type of fairy creature. Because there's numerous different versions of fairies. So which one would the other mother be exactly? And I think I figured out which one she might be. The Tithel Taiwateg, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that. Which is a type of fairy folk, which what interested me is because in their description, sorry I had to locate it, covered human children whom they kidnapped, leaving changelings in their place. Doesn't that sound, aside from like the golden haired part, doesn't that sound eerily similar to what the other mother does? She kidnaps the children and then leaves, at least in the books, I mean not the book, the movie, leaves behind the doll, which looks exactly like them, like how a changeling would. Well, according to some sources say the changelings look identical. Some sources say they look deformed, which still the doll technically does look deformed because of the button eyes. But still, they dance and make fairy rings. They live underground or underwater, and bestow riches on those they find favor. But these gifts vanish if they are spoken of. Sorry, where I have my mouse position. That's aside from like the spoken of, that kind of makes sense since that also fits since Coraline is technically bestowed riches in the forms of food and get nice clothing and stuff like that. And technically they do vanish when they are spoken of, in the sense that when the cat and in the movie the other YB and all that speak of how the other mother and the world really work, the gifts do vanish in the sense that they stop coming. And as the Bendith Yamal, which is another name of them, they're sometimes described as stunted and ugly. And while the other mother, she's huge, but the ugly part, that fits with a T. So I'm pretty convinced that the other mother is a tickly with Teg, which means for fair family, which also is a clear tie to the other mother, since she is a fairy creature and poses as someone's family member. But that's not going to be all that I'm going to be looking at with this video. Another key point that I want to focus on is they dance and make fairy rings, and they live underground or underwater. That kind of puts a damper on the theory that she is a tickly with Teg, because the fact that she does, like, she lives behind the door on the house. But one thing does make this theory make sense, which is the fairy rings. The the well, the never-ending, the bottomless well, has a fairy ring around it. And technically, if there is a portal there, they live underground or under the water. Technically, that both counts since it's an underground well, and there's water underneath at the very bottom. So what if the well was at least is either a portal to the other world or was one? I think the other world is actually a fairyland, which is what they call the world, like a separate dimension where the fairies live. And the key points that I managed to find on the fairylands is that their entrances are at the bottoms of lakes or in caves, which in a sense, the fairyland, technically they are at a bottom of a very small lake when it comes to like the well, or an underwater lake. We don't know what's really down there. And technically the portal between the other world and the real world, even though in the books they do state it's actually another living entity on its own that's far older and probably more dangerous than the other mother, it technically is also a type of cave of a sense. So that's 2 check marks already off the bat. And one thing, when you go into a fairyland, the fairies use food and treasures to try to ensnare you into getting stuck, staying forever. And doesn't that sound exactly like Coraline does, like what happens in Coraline with the other mother? Coraline comes in and the other mother starts ensnaring Coraline with food and gifts. And I think what we see in the movie is actually sort of a twisted version of those folk stories of people being lured into the fairylands, because one key thing about those folklore, we never know what happens afterwards. Like, if the person goes in and, like, majority of the time, they never come back out or escape before they can be ensnared. So what if what we see with, like, going off of my other theory, how the other mother took the children, that's how with sewing buttons into their eyes and removing their souls from their bodies and then using the bodies as henchmen is how humans become part of the fair folk when they go into the fairyland and become ensnared. We don't know for sure if that isn't the case, at least in that universe. So, and one key detail that I got with all this was one thing, the fangirl, I know I keep mentioning her in my videos, one thing that kept baffling her was how when looking at the movie, it skips time a lot. Like, you got them moving into the Pink Palace. I forget the date there. Then, like, a couple weeks pass and it's President's Day and right before school. And then at the very end, it's springtime. And the reason that has baffled her about how the time skip is and made her thinking that Coraline is dead and stuff like that, or the other mother is, or in the Limbo Pink Palace. But one key detail of Fairylands that when you go into them, the time moves very differently. Kind of like how it does in Narnia, is that except it's kind of reverse, where like you can spend like one day in the other world and you can come out and several months or years has passed. And well, that would cause for alarm, because like, for example, the parents never why would the parents not realize Coraline is missing? The best I can figure that is either, no offense, I think they might have been too caught up in their work to notice or something, because I know that's something that's really awful, but one thing a theory that I believe in is that the other mother was using her magic to make it so Coraline's parents were a lot more neglectful than they actually are, judging by their 180 by the end of the book and movie. So I believe the other mother, like Coraline, was actually when she thought she was just spending overnight, she was actually spending numerous like weeks and months in the other world, and the parents never realized because they were under the other mother's spell. The neighbors were nut jobs, so they probably didn't notice. And then YB might have noticed, but kept his mouth shut, just never mentioned it or something. And if like authorities tried coming to check on Coraline because she was missing school, the other mother could have used her magic over the area to make them like forget what they were doing and leave, and sort of give them temporary amnesia. Heck, she could probably given it to the neighbors and YB too, if like they were like, hey, I wonder where Coraline, and they go to check and the other mother's just all like, you're not pulled like a Jedi mind trick on him. Sorry, I couldn't remember what the line was. Like, I was trying to make like the Obi-Wan line, but I couldn't remember how it went. Yeah, and that's pretty much it on my theory. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.